Chronic stress, anxiety, and burnout are contributing to us becoming more disconnected and dissociated. And this impacts our mental, emotional, and physical well being. In this episode, I dive into why we lack bodily awareness as a society and how to reconnect.
You are listening to the Sound Therapy Network podcast, where we talk about all things sound healing. This podcast is for practitioners and clients who want to learn more about this magical healing modality.
You are listening to the Sound Therapy Network podcast. I am your host, Niajae, embodiment coach, owner of Bliss Wellness Studio in Tampa, Florida, and the creator of Somatic Sound Therapy. This topic is something that I witness every day in the work that I do. As a society, we are lacking bodily awareness. And I don't just mean not noticing the aches and pains in our body. I mean self-awareness around our emotions, around our thoughts, awareness of how we impact others, and even how we move through the world. Noticing how heavy-handed we are, how hard we may walk if we slam doors without noticing them. What I've noticed is a lot of people are completely disconnected from their bodies, and it's not their fault. It's a result of chronic stress, anxiety, burnout, and the culture that we live in that teaches us to push past our discomfort, self-abandon, and keep going no matter what. And it's pushing us to the point of illness. Autoimmune diseases are skyrocketing, cancers are skyrocketing. So there is a huge problem here, and I want to talk about it. So in this episode, I am going to break down why we are so disconnected, the cost of living this way, and most importantly, how to gently reconnect to our bodies so we can regulate our nervous system, tune into our intuition, and create a life that actually feels good on the inside and not just looks good on the outside, i.e. social media. So I actually noticed this in practitioners and clients. When I work with practitioners going through my trauma-informed sound therapy practitioner certification, or working with them in the somatic sound therapy mentorship, one of the things that I notice is, as practitioners, we don't notice how hard we walk until we're doing a somatic sound bath and we're walking around the room, having to be a little bit more quiet, and then reminding practitioners to slow down, to soften their voice, things like that. Sometimes we don't notice how loud we speak. Sometimes we don't notice how aggressive or heavy-handed we can be. So reminding practitioners to soften, reminding them to be more gentle when they're playing the bowls, when they're activating the bowls. And then with clients, I see this every single day. So I have an intake form that asks clients to rate their level of stress, anxiety, and physical tension and pain in the body. And obviously I do this every day, so I notice when people have anxiety. I can see it. I can see it in the body language. I can feel it energetically. I can see the body motion, how they're holding their body. You can see when someone has anxiety. You can see when they have a tremendous amount of stress. So I notice it immediately when people come into my business, and then when they fill out the intake form, I can see this person's anxiety is at an 8, but then they'll put their anxieties at a 2. They come in like hot and heavy, like a wrecking ball sometimes, and a little frantic, and then they'll say their stress is at a 2 or their anxiety is at a 2. And so I notice this often. And over time, I'm like, man, people really are so disconnected from themselves, from their body, from what is actually going on in their body. This is a huge problem. And so when I hear people talk about illness, autoimmune diseases, cancers, and they're like, I don't know how I got here. I don't know how this happened. I realize that there is a disconnect that's impacting our mental, emotional, and physical well-being, if we can integrate mindfulness practices that are connecting us back to our body, somatic practices that are connecting us back to our body, one, we'll have a lot more awareness around our systems. If our nervous system is in fight, flight, or freeze, or if it's regulated, we'll have more awareness around why we're not receiving quality sleep, why we have consistent digestive issues. My goal here isn't to shame or judge anyone. I had to learn bodily awareness myself. I was born in New York, so I was definitely one of those, I come in hot and heavy, always moving fast and abrupt and aggressive, and I had to learn to soften as well. By no means is this meant to cause any shame, because I've been there, I've had to do the work, and I will share later in this episode some of the things that I did to create bodily awareness in my own journey. When I say bodily awareness, what does that actually mean? Because we have self-awareness, and a lot of people will say, I'm self-aware. There was a Harvard study that said only 10% of people are actually self-aware. And the way that they measured that is having internal self-awareness and also external self-awareness. Usually people have either or. It's very rare, only 10% actually has both. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into self-awareness, because I think even with spatial awareness, you know, when people are like too close, or they're in your personal space, or they aren't able to read the room sometimes. So there's spatial awareness. So that's part of the external awareness. But then we have different layers of internal self-awareness. So when I say bodily awareness, one of the things that I mean is emotional awareness, knowing what we're feeling. A lot of times people don't know how they feel. If you ask them, how do you feel? What do you want? What do you need? They're like, I don't know. When you come into a sound bath at Bliss, typically we have a card to pull that has a thought-provoking question, a journal prompt, a reflection question. And there's a lot of times where people have no idea. They're like, I never thought of that. And I think that there's a lot of our society is just operating in autopilot, maybe in survival mode. They're just trying to get by every day. So they're not thinking about feelings and emotions. They're just trying to survive. So knowing what we're feeling, and also creating the language to be able to communicate it. At the end of every session, I ask, how are we feeling? And often people don't have the word. And I mean, obviously, coming out of a sound bath, you're blissed out, but sometimes people really don't know how to put it into words. So I think that part of it is being able to identify what we're feeling, and then also being able to articulate what we're feeling. So the next one is mental awareness, noticing thoughts. And this is something else. I dive deep into emotional intelligence. And so I look at patterns, I look at things a little bit deeper sometimes, and I notice that people are not necessarily aware of their thoughts. And I listen very closely to what people say, especially when they come into the studio. I listen to how they talk about themselves, how they talk about people in their lives. So noticing our negative self-talk, noticing our patterns, our perspective. And perspective is something that we can shift. If we are seeing life through a lens of pain, trauma, struggle, we can shift that to adapt a healthier perspective. So noticing our thoughts, noticing our emotions, because that's data. And if we don't have bodily awareness, we're not connected to our intuition to really be able to pinpoint these things clearly. So part of bodily awareness to me is connecting back to the body, so we have that inner wisdom, which is so important. So I mentioned external awareness, which is very important as well. Noticing how we speak, how loud we are, noticing how hard we walk, noticing how hard we close doors, and noticing how rough we may be. And when I say rough, I'm not saying it in like a aggressive way. When I say rough, a lot of times when practitioners are playing sound bowls, crystal singing bowls are so delicate. I always have to remind them to soften, slow down, soften. And even when I say soften or slow down, they're like, I feel like I'm going so slow. And I'm like, even slower. I think that there is a lot of opportunity for us to soften as a society because life is so challenging, because so many people are operating in burnout. We've become very numb and, again, disconnected and dissociated. So when we connect back to our body and now we're playing this delicate instrument or activating a bowl on someone's body, it's important that we have that external awareness. It's very, very, very important. That's part of being trauma informed. But for clients, I think how we show up to the people that we care about, how we move in a space, because I have a sound therapy studio, when people are around and my neighbors are closing their doors or clients are in the lobby speaking, being aware of how loud someone's speaking, especially in an area where some people need it to be a little quiet. So think about like a library, when people just start talking loud in a library, not reading the room, knowing that, oops, I have to be a little quiet here. So things like that, like there's always someone who just doesn't notice their surroundings. Now, I will say, there's a chance that people are on the complete opposite end of the spectrum where they may be hypervigilant, where they're constantly scanning the room, but then have no internal awareness of how they're feeling, and they shift or self-abandon to accommodate everyone externally while abandoning internally. So I believe our healing journey is all about finding balance, finding that happy medium, having both internal and external self-awareness. I mentioned spatial awareness, and the last thing that I want to talk about when it comes to bodily awareness is posture and little things that we do, like tapping the leg or twirling the hair, like constantly pulling the hair. These are things that are an indication of anxiety, hunched shoulders, and posture that is protective, like if we have our arms folded or something like this. And I'm actually doing the motion. If you are listening on your favorite podcast platform, the video is on YouTube. Not much to look at, but I was doing some like folding the arms or holding the arm across the chest. These are all defense mechanisms that we do, and a lot of times people don't have awareness of it. And I'll see someone like shaking their leg, and you know they have anxiety. Shaking your leg is a sign of anxiety. And I know there's people that I have conversations with about anxiety, and they're like, I don't have anxiety, but they're shaking their leg. You know, even like twirling a pin, doing like, these are like very like nervous reactions from our bodies. So when someone says, I don't have anxiety, they're filling out their intake form and they're tapping their leg or tapping their foot the whole entire time, but then they rate their anxiety at a 2. That's an indication to me that this person doesn't have a lot of bodily awareness. And that's data for practitioners, because if we play the bowls too loud, if we have too heavy of a bowl on the body, that can be overstimulating to their nervous system because they're disconnected and dissociated. We want to be very, 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 very gentle while we reconnect them to their body. And that's the beauty of working with someone that is trauma informed. They have awareness around these types of things. The next thing I want to share is 7 reasons why we lack bodily awareness in our society. Because again, it's not our fault. This is a societal problem. So it's not an individual problem. I'm not saying anything is wrong with anyone that does have anxiety, because as a society, pretty much everyone has anxiety. It's a societal problem that we are facing right now. So 7 reasons why. Number 1 is chronic stress and burnout. So I say this almost every episode. 8 in 10 people are operating in burnout. It's a problem. It's causing more autoimmune diseases, more cancers. So it is a huge, huge problem. And that is part of why I work so hard in my practice, is to help people repair their nervous systems and recover from burnout, to try to minimize the illness that we're facing as a society. And what people are doing is they're dissociating so they can keep functioning, so they can keep going. I saw this meme that was like, the therapist is like, notice the sensations in your body. How do we handle, when your body's communicating to you? And the client said, the best I can do is dissociate, or something like that. I'm probably messing it up. But the point is, as a society, we are disconnecting and dissociating rather than really doing the work to regulate our nervous system. And not that people don't want to, it's that people are so burnt out, so stressed out, and most of the time just trying to survive, just trying to get by. So it's really important that we integrate something into our daily routine that is helping regulate our nervous system every single day, whether it's breath work, whether it's sound therapy, whether it's listening to healing frequencies for 10, 15 minutes a day. I believe we have to integrate something in our everyday routine that helps us regulate our nervous system. Our health depends on it. Number 2, we live in a high anxiety culture. The economy, politics, global uncertainty, there's so much that we are navigating in today's society, and not to mention COVID. That was a pandemic, that was trauma for the whole entire world, and our nervous systems are still repairing from that. Number 3 is a fast-paced environment. So life is happening fast. Technology is advancing rapidly. We are inundated with information, bombarded with notifications, our phones, our smartwatches. I mean, we are constantly stimulated, overstimulated. That's why sound baths that are loud and chaotic and have a whole bunch of instruments, it's actually not soothing and repairing the nervous system. It's counterproductive because we're already overstimulated as a society. So fast-paced environments, and I live in Tampa, which is a pretty fast city, but I was born in New York. So like I said earlier, I had to learn how to slow down and soften. And then you think about places like LA, that's even faster. I went to LA in the last couple of years, and it's like the people are so high strung. Their shoulders are up to their ears. You could just see the stress. You could see the anxiety. And don't get me wrong, I have so many clients in California, so many practitioners that I work with in California. But even living in those fast-paced cities, it's even more important to have things in your everyday routine that help regulate your nervous system. When you see someone's shoulders up to their ears, that is a tremendous amount of stress and anxiety built up in their body. So again, the work that I do, I can look at a person's body posture and how they move and tell you how much anxiety and stress they have. And I'm doing wellness scans, so I've just been able to notice it over the years, to where now I can just look at a person and be able to tell. Number 4 is coping through disconnection, tuning out pain or overwhelm, numbing. We live in a society that loves to numb. So there's so many ways to numb, not just with substances, but also scrolling on social media. I've done it before. I am guilty of this one. Long day, I don't want to think anymore. I just scroll, just mindless scrolling on social media. Or it's very easy to numb out to Netflix, you're not really watching the TV, but you're just like staring at it, just numbing out with Netflix. But then we also have substances, we have medication, we have weed, we have CBD, we have so many things that people are using to numb. Also, sex, gambling, shopping. Shopping is another one that I'm guilty of. And we're not really leaning in to get to the root of the problem. These are band-aids that we're just putting over top of the problem. And if we're using substances, drinking, for example, it's actually adding to the problem versus helping actually soothe ourselves from the problem. I will say that we are waking up to this, and there are products coming out to help with this, to help combat how much stress we're navigating as a society. There are non-alcoholic drinks that have adaptogens in them, and coffee alternatives that have adaptogens in them, and things to help fight the impact of stress on our bodies and nervous systems. So there are things that are helping the issue. We just have to make sure that we're implementing and integrating these tools into our everyday lives, making sure that we're doing something to soothe and regulate our nervous system every single day. Every single day. So the next one is technology overload. So I already mentioned the notifications, but the EMF, the overstimulation, the EMF, we don't see it. So we know that we're receiving a ton of notifications on our cell phones and smartwatches, but we don't see the EMF. But when you become sensitive to energy and you're really in tune with your body, you'll feel the sluggishness when you're in areas with high EMF. It's a huge, huge, huge problem. It is literally killing our cells. Literally killing ourselves, which is why sound therapy is so important right now, even if it's just to repair ourselves from how much EMF we are taking in. If you don't go into a deep meditation, if you don't come out of it feeling like you astro projected to another dimension, that's okay, because your cells still needed that session. And I'm a huge advocate for doing a sound bath once a week. And because we have Wi-Fi everywhere, even if your Wi-Fi router is nowhere near your bedroom, even if you turn your Wi-Fi router off at night, you're still in buildings, in businesses where you're being blasted with EMF. So playing a bowl on your body, if you have bowls at home, playing a Himalayan bowl on your body every day is going to help your cells repair. Playing healing frequencies, playing your crystal bowls every day, it's going to help your body repair. If you don't have bowls at home, if you're a client, getting to a sound bath once a week, and if you can more than once a week, it's going to help, because we're taking in an unreal amount of EMF. The next one is cultural programming, hustle culture, self-abandonment, survival mode. I mean, hustle culture is killing us, and people don't feel like rest is okay. Taking a break is okay, but also we're in survival mode, and I think everyone has to work a little bit harder to maintain the life we had before or try to get ahead, because of the economy, because of everything happening in the world, the housing market, like it's insane. So it's like, I get it. And we also have to make sure we have the tools to make sure our health is not suffering. The last one is exhaustion. Honestly, people are exhausted. They're so tired. They don't even realize when they fall asleep. The amount of clients that fall asleep and start snoring in sessions, which I'm totally fine with snoring. We've talked about this in previous episodes, but sometimes they'll wake up and be like, oh, I didn't even fall asleep. And I'm like, you were definitely asleep. You were definitely asleep, but they had no awareness of falling asleep or snoring. So people are exhausted. We're exhausted as a society. And so, again, this is not to create any type of shame or make anyone feel bad. These are societal problems that we are facing, and we have to have all the tools that we can gather to combat these issues. And the cost of not working on these things, the cost of not connecting back to your body, is losing touch with your intuition, with your heart, with your needs, with your desires, with your zest for life. I've said it several times, when I see people's zest for life go, their health starts to decline. When you ask a person, what is it that you really want? And they're like, I don't know. That's because they're not connected to their heart, but you can't connect to your heart if you're not connected to your body. So it's really important that we do this work and we try to minimize the impact that stress and burnout is taking on our mental, emotional, and physical well-being. And when people wind up getting sick and they ask themselves, how did I get here? How did this happen? It's because the disconnection and the dissociation has been going on for so long, it finally caught up to them. So what I try to do in my business is not allow it to catch up to them and create a safe space for people to actually repair and regulate their nervous system. For me, somatic sound therapy is so much more than meditation or relaxation. It is preventative care to help repair and regulate the nervous system so we can connect back to our bodies and tune into our inner wisdom to know when our nervous system is in fight, flight, or freeze, when we're on edge, and how close we are to that edge. If someone comes into my business like a wrecking ball and they say that their stress level is at a 2 or 4, and I could physically, visibly see the stress and anxiety, they don't know how close they are to complete burnout. Connecting back to our bodies, repairing and regulating our nervous system is so important. So how exactly do we do that? Obviously, somatic sound therapy, but of course I'm biased, right? Other ways beyond somatic sound therapy is gentle yoga. So I'm not talking about power yoga where it's like super intense. Gentle yoga, mindfulness practices. So checking in. I mentioned that I was going to share what I did to start to connect back to my body and my intuition. I would do check-ins every single morning. How am I feeling mentally, physically, and emotionally? And I would rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. And why? So if I rated how I felt at a 4, what would bring me up to a 6 or 7? And so these daily check-ins really started creating that internal self-awareness. And that helped me be able to tune in quickly, effortlessly. So the next thing is gentle breath work. Keyword, gentle breath work, not the type of breath work where you are hyperventilating. Gentle breath work. Journaling, again, mindfulness practices, journaling, somatic practices. So you can do somatic check-ins, scanning your body for sensations, noticing the sensations that you feel, noticing any area that when you scan it, you feel nothing, because we are numb. So sometimes like taps on the body can just create awareness to our body. Sometimes we've completely disconnected and dissociated. We have to create sensation, and gentle taps, obviously. We don't want you to beat on yourself. So very gentle taps to different parts of your body that you may have disconnected from, so you regain that connection. I've said this before, but I just want to throw it out there again. Things like cold plunges is actually counterproductive because you're zapping your system, you're zapping your body, you're putting yourself in a situation that causes you to tense up versus relax. Tensing up is keeping your nervous system in fight, flight, or freeze, and it's not actually soothing your nervous system. So even though it may create some sensation in your body, it's not exactly the type of sensation we want. We want things that are soothing, nurturing, and gentle, because that is what the nervous system needs to truly repair and regulate. Bodily awareness is the first step to nervous system regulation. And when our nervous system is regulated, we have more clarity, more creativity, more energy and zest for life. We have a deeper connection to our intuition, understanding what we truly need, what we truly desire, and we have more productivity. So I give my clients the example of when we're in a rush or when we're in a panic and we're looking for our keys, but we can't find them. But usually they're right in front of our face, but we can't see it because we're in a panic, we're in a rush. That is an example of our nervous system being in fight, flight, or freeze. We don't see the possibilities, we don't see the opportunities. Life feels tight, constricted, right? And when my nervous system is activated, that's what I feel. I feel this like restriction, this contracting in my body, and everything feels tight. And that's why when I mention like how everyone looks in LA to me with their shoulders up, if you notice, if you're watching the video, when I say, everything contracts, my shoulders automatically raise, because when life feels heavy, what we do is tend to slouch, we curl into ourselves. Or if things feel really intense and heightened and chaotic, it feels restrictive in our body and we tighten up, and usually that creates that tightness in our shoulders. So noticing when you're in a rush, when you're in a panic, and how things just keep going wrong and you can't find the keys, but they're right there in front of your face. That's how a lot of people are living their lives every day. And so when we can slow down, when we can soften, when we can pause and reflect, when we can look around, when we can look up, we're constantly looking down at our devices. So it's contributing to the stress, it's contributing to the anxiety, it's contributing to the disconnect. Another thing I want to mention is I used to say, oh, I work really well under pressure. Pressure creates diamonds, right? This is a result of our hustle culture. It's the programming that we have adapted. And one of the things that I realized when I actually regulated my nervous system, what I can get done and what I can create from a place of regulation rather than pressure, it's a drastic difference. One feels forced and restricted almost, and one feels more aligned and grounded. And when you start to regulate your nervous system, you can feel the difference. And obviously, as a business owner, being an entrepreneur, just being a human trying to make it in our society, sometimes we do have to push a little bit harder, but implementing and integrating tools that help us regulate our nervous system, so we're creating and producing and showing up from a grounded, regulated place, is going to feel better. And when we feel good internally, it reflects in what we're putting out into the world. Staying in fight, flight, or freeze keeps us in survival mode, and staying in survival mode keeps us in that rat race. So learning to regulate our nervous system, paying attention to when we are activated, when we're in that constant state of fight, flight, or freeze, and breaking the cycle of self-abandoning and getting in the habit of taking pauses, slowing down, softening. And I know that softening, even like probably for men are not going to think about softening, but we have a mental health crisis with men right now. And I always say men's mental health matters too, because there is a lot of issues around men feeling like they have to be hard and vulnerability is weakness, so they have to be stoic and act like they don't have emotions, but it is catching up to them. So these tools are needed for both men and women and non-binary. So when we can stop self-abandoning, connect back to our body, connect back to our intuition, connect back to our heart, create that bodily awareness, it's going to help us improve our zest for life, our mental, emotional, and physical well-being. And it will reflect in how life looks to us, because it's going to impact our perspective. We'll adapt a healthier perspective, and it's also going to improve how we show up in life. The main thing I want you to take away from this episode is that reconnecting to your body is the first step to reconnecting to yourself, your intuition, your needs, your desires. The world we live in pushes us to override, to hustle, to abandon our bodies until they break down. And what we're doing as Sound Therapy Network and with somatic sound therapy is hopefully helping you prioritize your well-being before your body breaks down. My hope is that we stop self-abandoning and we start prioritizing our well-being. Thank you so much for tuning in. Share this episode with someone that will gain value from it. And until next time, wishing you healing and harmony.
Thank you so much for listening to the Sound Therapy Network podcast. Edgar Cayce says, sound is the medicine of the future. The future is now. By listening and sharing this podcast, you are contributing to the wave of healing in the world and safety in the healing space.